Ideally, nations are defined by borders. But the Kingdom of Denmark is defined by a balance, a unique harmony between the safety of the European harbor and the raw power of the Arctic wild. While recent headlines have turned global eyes toward the north, the truth of this union goes far deeper than modern geopolitics. For over 1,000 years, long before other powers looked north, these two worlds have been woven together by Viking ships, trade, and a shared cultural soul. Today, we are journeying across this vast realm. From the fairy tale streets of Odense to the frozen fjords of Disko Bay to reveal the Arctic crown. We will look past the politics to show you the history, the people, and the breathtaking landscapes that explain exactly why Greenland and Denmark are inseparable. This is not a story of two separate lands. This is the story of one kingdom, where the coziness of Hygge meets the majesty of the ice. Welcome to the ultimate journey across the United Realm. The heartbeat of the kingdom starts here, where the Baltic Sea meets ancient harbor walls in Copenhagen. For centuries, ships carrying goods from distant lands have sailed into these waters. Today, the city stands as a living gateway between Scandinavian tradition and modern Danish life. Nyhavn welcomes us with its famous row of colorful townhouses lining a narrow canal. Built in the 1670s as a busy commercial port, this waterfront once hosted sailors, merchants, and writers seeking inspiration. Hans Christian Andersen himself lived in 3 different houses along this stretch, penning some of his most beloved tales here. Now, wooden boats bob gently at their moorings, while locals and visitors fill the outdoor cafes that spill onto the cobblestones. Amalienborg Palace commands attention. With its 4 identical Rococo mansions arranged around an octagonal courtyard. The Danish royal family has called this elegant complex home since 1794. Each day at noon, the Royal Guard marches through the streets in their blue uniforms and bearskin hats. The changing of the guard draws crowds who watch this tradition unfold beneath the statue of King Frederick V. Along the harbor's edge sits the Little Mermaid, gazing out across the water since 1913. This bronze statue honors Andersen's fairy tale of longing and sacrifice. She appears smaller than many expect, yet her quiet presence draws over 1 million visitors each year. Nearby, Tivoli Gardens offers its historic amusement park charm, while Strøget stretches through the city as one of Europe's longest pedestrian shopping streets, and Christiansborg Palace stands on its island as the seat of Danish Parliament. just north of the capital. At the royal backyard reveals where Danish kings wrote their grandest chapters. This region sits at the northern tip of the island of Zealand, just a short drive from Copenhagen. Rolling green countryside meets the waters of the Øresund Strait here. Ancient forests hide castles that once shaped the fate of kingdoms. Kronborg Castle rises from the coastline at Helsingør, guarding the narrow passage between Denmark and Sweden. Built in the 1500s, this fortress controlled the lucrative sound dues that every passing ship had to pay. Its Renaissance walls and copper-green spires have witnessed 4 centuries of European power struggles. Shakespeare immortalized this place as Elsinore, and the brooding home of Prince Hamlet. Today, visitors walk the same stone corridors where actors have performed the famous tragedy for generations. Inland, Frederiksborg Castle presents a different face of Danish power. King Christian IV built this masterpiece in the early 1600s on 3 small islands in a lake. Red brick towers and sandstone decorations reflect perfectly in the still waters below. The castle now houses the Museum of National History, where portraits and tapestries tell the story of Denmark across 500 years. Gardens designed in the French Baroque style stretch behind the main building, offering peaceful paths through sculpted hedges and fountains. The Danish Riviera curves along the northern coastline, drawing summer visitors to its sandy beaches and charming harbor towns. Further south stands Roskilde Cathedral, a brick Gothic monument where Danish kings and queens have been laid to rest since the Middle Ages. North Zealand holds these treasures close, each one adding another layer to the story of this remarkable kingdom. Crossing the Great Belt Bridge, we arrive on the island of Funen, the Green Garden of Denmark. Nestled between the Jutland Peninsula and Zealand, this garden island has earned its nickname through rolling farmland and gentle orchards. The landscape here feels softer than the dramatic north. Place where manor houses rise from the countryside and history whispers through every village lane. Funen offers the perfect gateway into understanding the Danish soul before we venture toward the Arctic ice. Egeskov Castle stands as one of Europe's best-preserved Renaissance water castles. Built in 1554 on a foundation of oak piles driven into a small lake, the fortress seems to float upon the water. Its red brick towers and steep copper roofs reflect in the still surface below. The surrounding gardens stretch across dozens of acres, featuring hedge mazes, bamboo groves, and ancient tree avenues that draw visitors from around the world. Odense, the island's largest city, carries the spirit of its most famous son, Hans Christian Andersen. The storyteller who gave the world The Little Mermaid and The Ugly Duckling was born here in 1805. Cobblestone streets wind through the old quarter, where colorful timber-framed houses lean toward each other. The city breathes creativity into its museums, theaters, and quiet corners, where imagination still feels alive. The Great Belt Bridge connects Funen to Zealand in a feat of modern engineering that reshaped Danish travel. Spanning nearly 18 kilometers across open water, this suspension bridge ranks among the longest in the world. Its towers rise over 250 meters into the Danish sky, visible for miles across the flat landscape. Beyond the bridge, the South Funen archipelago scatters dozens of small islands into the Baltic Sea, each one holding its own quiet charm. To find the roots of this ancient kingdom, we travel west to the marshlands, where Danish civilization took hold. South Jutland stretches across the peninsula's southern reaches, where flat marshlands meet the North Sea. This region shaped the nation long before Copenhagen rose to prominence. Here, the earliest chapters of Danish history were written in stone, salt, and tide. Ribe stands as Denmark's oldest town, its origins reaching back over 1,300 years. Viking merchants once gathered here to trade amber, furs, and slaves. The cathedral's red brick tower has watched over these streets since the 1100s. Cobblestone lanes wind past crooked half-timbered houses that lean into one another like old friends. At night, the town watchman still walks his rounds, singing verses that echo across the centuries. Beyond Ribe, the Wadden National Park reveals a landscape in constant motion. Twice daily, the tide retreats to expose vast mudflats teeming with life. Millions of migratory birds rest here on their journeys between Arctic breeding grounds and African winters. Seals bask on sandbanks while the wind carries the sharp scent of salt and seaweed. This UNESCO World Heritage Site reminds us that nature here follows rhythms far older than any kingdom. The nearby island of Rømø offers windswept beaches, where this wild coastline continues its endless dance with the sea. Further along the coast at Esbjerg, 4 towering white figures gaze out across the water. The men at sea stand 9 meters tall, their simple forms silhouetted against grey Nordic skies. Created in 1995, these seated giants have become symbols of Denmark's eternal relationship with the ocean. Inland at Dibul, a historic mill marks the site where Danish identity was forged through conflict and loss. Together, these landmarks trace a line from Viking traders to modern Danes, all shaped by this windswept corner of the kingdom. Moving north into the peninsula's center, the landscape shifts from history to the modern pulse of Aarhus. Central Jutland unfolds before us as a region where Denmark's second-largest city meets rolling countryside and quiet lakes. Here, Viking heritage sits comfortably alongside modern Nordic design. This is where the Old Kingdom planted deep roots that still grow today. Aarhus rises along the eastern coast, a city that refuses to live in the past while honoring it completely. Founded by Vikings over 1,200 years ago, it now pulses with university energy and creative spirit. The Latin Quarter draws wanderers through winding streets, lined with half-timbered houses and independent shops. Harbour developments have transformed the waterfront into a showcase of Scandinavian architecture and urban renewal. The Aros Art Museum stands as a bold statement on the city skyline. Inside, 10 floors of contemporary art challenge and inspire visitors from around the world. At its crown sits your rainbow panorama, a circular walkway of colored glass designed by Olafur Eliasson. Walking through this rooftop installation, the entire city transforms through shifting hues of red, orange, yellow, and blue. Few museums offer such a striking marriage of art and architecture. Den Gamle By, meaning the Old Town, preserves Danish life across the centuries in an extraordinary open-air museum. Over 75 historic buildings were relocated here from towns across the country. Cobblestone streets lead past workshops where craftspeople demonstrate traditional trades. The museum stretches through time periods, from Hans Christian Andersen's era to a fully recreated 1970s apartment. Nearby, the Mosgard Museum showcases Viking artifacts beneath its grass-covered roof, while the Lake District around Silkeborg offers peaceful waterways threading through forested hills. At the very tip of the European continent, the land narrows to a slender finger pointing toward Scandinavia. This windswept peninsula has shaped Danish identity for centuries. The region called Skagen sits at this dramatic endpoint, where two seas have battled since ancient times. Artists discovered this place in the 1800s, drawn by light that seems to glow from within. Yellow-washed houses with red-tiled roofs dot the landscape like scattered amber. Fishing boats still rest on sandy shores, their colorful hulls weathered by salt and time. At Greenland, Denmark simply ends. The Skagerrak and Kattegat seas collide here in a visible line of churning water. Visitors stand, with 1 foot in each sea, feeling currents pull in opposite directions. Waves crash against each other rather than against land, creating patterns found nowhere else on Earth. The sand spit shifts and changes with every storm that passes through. Seals often rest on the outer banks, watching curious humans with equal interest. This meeting of waters has claimed countless ships over the centuries. Inland, Råbjerg Mile moves slowly but relentlessly across the landscape. This migrating sand dune spans 40 hectares and towers up to 15 meters high. Wind pushes it eastward at roughly 15 meters each year. Walking across its barren surface feels like crossing a small desert dropped into northern Europe. The dune began forming around the 1500s after forest clearing exposed sandy soil. Nothing grows here, nothing stays. Everything shifts with the changing winds. Råbjerg Knud Lighthouse stands as a monument to nature's patient victory. Built in 1899, it once warned ships away from dangerous shores. Sand slowly buried the keeper's buildings, forcing abandonment in 1968. The tower now perches on eroding cliffs, moved once already to delay its fall into the sea. Nearby, the city of Aalborg offers a contrast of urban energy, while Løkken Beach draws visitors to its traditional bathing houses. Together, these places reveal how North Jutland balances between human ambition and elemental forces. Before turning north, we cast a glance east to a sunlit island of granite rising from the Baltic Sea. Bornholm rises from the water like a world apart from the rest of Denmark. Rocky cliffs meet sandy shores here, and ancient forests blanket the interior. This small island holds more history per square mile than most regions 10 times its size. Hammershus Castle ruins stand guard over the northern coast, their weathered walls visible for miles. Built in the 1200s, this fortress grew to become the largest medieval stronghold in northern Europe. Stone towers rise against the sky, their empty windows framing views of the sea below. Walking through these ruins, we trace the footsteps of bishops, soldiers, and prisoners who once called these walls home. The southern tip of Bornholm offers a complete contrast at Dueodde Beach. Fine white sand stretches along the coastline, so soft it was once used in hourglasses. Dunes rise and fall beneath scattered pine trees that bend with the coastal winds. The shallow waters glow turquoise on calm days. A surprising sight this far north in European waters. Scattered across the island stand 4 remarkable round churches. built in the 1100s as both houses of worship and defensive towers. Their thick white walls and conical black roofs create silhouettes found nowhere else on Earth. Nearby, the fishing village of Gudjam clings to rocky slopes above its small harbor. Inland, the forested rift valley of Ekkodalen carves through the landscape, its echoing walls giving the place its name. Leaving the mainland behind, we fly northwest to the first stepping stones of the Arctic, the Faroe Islands. These 18 rugged islands belong to the Danish realm. Yet they hold a fierce independence shaped by centuries of isolation. Here, the old Norse spirit lives on in a place where sheep outnumber people and grass-roofed homes dot the windswept hills. Our destination is the capital region, where Viking heritage meets the pulse of modern Faroes life. Tórshavn ranks among the smallest capitals in the world, yet it carries a weight far beyond its size. Roughly 18,000 people call this harbour town home, making it the beating heart of the islands. Colourful wooden houses cluster along narrow streets that twist toward the waterfront. Fishing boats bob in the protected harbour while seabirds wheel overhead. The name itself honors Thor, the Norse god of thunder, and linking this quiet capital to the mythology of the Vikings who settled here over 1,000 years ago. At the tip of a small peninsula sits Tinganes, one of the oldest parliamentary meeting places in the world. Vikings gathered on this rocky point as early as the 900s to settle disputes and make laws. Today, red-painted government buildings with turf roofs stand where those first assemblies met. The site remains the seat of Faroe's government, a living monument to over 1,000 years of self-rule. Walking these worn paths, the connection between past and present feels almost touchable. Nearby, the ancient village of Kirkjubur holds the ruins of a medieval cathedral, while the dramatic Vestmanna bird cliffs offer glimpses of puffins nesting on sheer rock faces above crashing waves. Beyond the capital, the archipelago reveals a world suspended between sky and ocean. Wrapped in mist and carved by wind. Here, the raw power of the Arctic wild that defines this kingdom reveals itself in every cliff face and rolling green slope. This is a land where nature writes the rules and humans simply follow. On the island of Vargar, Mulafossa waterfall plunges directly into the sea from a sheer cliff edge. The cascade drops nearly 30 meters, its waters disappearing into the churning Atlantic below. Behind the falls sits the tiny village of Gassadalur, and home to fewer than 20 residents. For generations, this settlement could only be reached by foot over a steep mountain pass. A tunnel finally connected it to the outside world in 2004. The waterfall has since become one of the most photographed sites in all the Faroes. Not far away lies Lake Sørvágsvatn, the largest lake in the archipelago. From certain vantage points, an optical illusion makes the water appear to hover high above the ocean. In truth, the lake sits just 30 meters above sea level. But the steep cliffs below create a stunning trick of perspective. At its southern edge, waters spill over the rocks in the Bustalafoss waterfall and tumbling down to meet the Atlantic. Walking trails wind along the shoreline, offering views that shift with every step and every passing cloud. On the northern island of Kalsoy, a narrow path leads to Kalur Lighthouse. The trail follows grassy ridges with steep drops on either side, demanding respect from all who walk it. At the end stands a small white lighthouse, dwarfed by the dramatic sea stacks and cliffs surrounding it. The views stretch endlessly across the water to neighboring islands wrapped in fog. Elsewhere in the Faroes, the village of Gjogv sits at the edge of a natural gorge that serves as its harbor. The peaceful village of Saxon rests in a valley where a tidal lagoon meets grass-roofed farmhouses, completing this portrait of a land untouched by time. To truly understand this Arctic crown, we land where ice meets ambition in Nuuk, the world's northernmost capital city. Nuuk rises from the rocky coastline of southwestern Greenland. Colorful buildings clinging to hillsides, while fjords stretch toward distant glaciers. This small city of roughly 19,000 souls serves as the beating heart of Greenlandic identity. Walk through the city center, and the answer to who belongs here is obvious. There are no strip malls or superhighways. Instead, you find hygge, that distinctly Danish coziness. From the modern architecture to the coffee culture, the heartbeat of this city is undeniably Nordic. You can buy land, but you cannot buy a culture that has evolved together for 3 centuries. Colonial Harbour tells the deeper story of this remote outpost. Wooden warehouses from the Danish trading era still line the waterfront, their weathered planks holding centuries of Arctic history. Fishing boats bob in waters that once welcomed supply ships from Copenhagen. The old harbour quarter preserves buildings that sheltered generations of hunters, traders, and settlers who carved out life at the edge of the habitable world. Walking these docks, the connection between Greenland and Denmark becomes something you can see and touch. Nuuk exists where the old ways meet the new, where Inuit tradition blends with Scandinavian influence. seal hunters still bring their catch to shore, while their children study at the local university. The midnight sun of summer gives way to the blue twilight of polar winter, yet life continues in this resilient community. This capital city stands as living proof that the Arctic Crown is not merely a political arrangement, but a shared way of facing the northern world together. North of the capital, the town of Sisimiut clings to the rocky coast just above the Arctic Circle. This is Greenland's second largest town, yet it holds fewer than 6,000 souls. Positioned where the ice never fully releases its grip, the old ways of survival meet the pulse of modern Arctic life. The colorful coastal houses define the town's character against the stark landscape. Bright reds, blues, yellows, and greens dot the rocky hillsides like scattered gems. These painted wooden structures follow a Danish colonial tradition, where colors once signaled the building's purpose. Today, they create a striking contrast against the gray stone and white snow that surrounds them. Walking through town, the vivid facades bring warmth to even the coldest winter days. Dog sledding remains central to life in Sisimiut, where the tradition runs deeper than tourism. Greenlandic sled dogs have worked these frozen trails for over 1,000 years. In winter, teams of huskies pull sleds across the sea ice and through mountain passes with practiced ease. The bond between musher and dog speaks to an ancient partnership, one that predates modern borders and politics. This is not performance. This is how generations have moved, hunted, and survived in the Arctic wild. Inland, at the end of a long fjord, lies Kangerlussuaq, a place that tells a powerful story of sovereignty. This small settlement serves as the gateway to one of Earth's most powerful natural wonders. Once a United States air base during the Second World War, today it welcomes travelers seeking the raw edge of the Arctic. This airport is the ultimate proof of Greenland's sovereignty. During the Cold War, this was a secret American airbase. But today, the soldiers are gone, and the runway belongs to the Greenlandic people. It stands as a reminder: global powers may visit, but this land always returns to its own. A short drive brings us to the ice sheet, which glows under the Arctic sun, its surface shifting between brilliant white and deep blue. Cracks and ridges tell stories of constant movement as this frozen river flows slowly toward the sea. Nearby, Russell Glacier carves its path through the landscape, its icy face meeting the tundra in a wall of compressed snow and time. The silence here feels almost sacred. broken only by the occasional crack of shifting ice echoing across the frozen plain. The true crown jewel of the West Coast rises from the shores of Disko Bay, where ice speaks in thunderous voices. The name Ilulissat means icebergs in Kangerlussuaq, the Greenlandic tongue. Here, the Arctic does not whisper. It announces itself with every cracking glacier and drifting mountain of ice. The Ilulissat ice fjord stretches inland from the coast, a frozen river of ancient ice recognized by the world as a place of outstanding natural value. This fjord became a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 2004, honoring its scientific importance and raw beauty. Icebergs the size of city blocks float silently through its waters, carved from the glacier that feeds it. Standing at the fjord's edge, the scale of nature here humbles even the most seasoned traveler. The source of these frozen giants is Jakobshavn Isbra, one of the fastest-moving glaciers on Earth. This massive river of ice drains roughly 6.5% of the entire Greenland ice sheet. Scientists have studied it for over 250 years, making it among the most observed glaciers in history. Each year, it releases billions of tons of ice into the fjord, creating the icebergs that define this landscape. The town itself holds quiet landmarks worth noting, including the red wooden Zion Church and the Hotel Arctic, perched on the hillside above the bay. Yet Ilulissat belongs to the ice. The Inuit people have called this place home for over 4,000 years, their lives shaped by the rhythm of freezing and thawing. This is where the Kingdom of Denmark touches something eternal, where human history meets a force far older than any nation. Sailing out from the fjord, we enter the vast theater of Disko Bay, where the Arctic Ocean meets its frozen giants. Massive icebergs drift through waters so still they become mirrors. This is where the Kingdom of Denmark touches the edge of the truly wild. Disko Island rises from these frigid waters like a forgotten continent. Known to Greenlanders as Kangerlussuaq, meaning the Big Island, it spans over 3,000 square miles of volcanic terrain. Basalt columns stand like ancient pillars along its coastline, remnants of eruptions millions of years old. Hot springs still bubble up through the permafrost here, proof that fire once ruled this land of ice. The island's interior holds valleys where Arctic foxes hunt, and musk oxen graze on hardy tundra grasses. Small settlements dot the island's edges, home to Inuit communities who have lived with these waters for generations. Fishing boats head out at dawn, returning with halibut and shrimp from the rich Arctic waters. Black sand beaches line portions of the shore, volcanic remnants that contrast sharply with the white ice floating just offshore. In summer, the midnight sun refuses to set, painting everything in gold for weeks on end. Winter brings darkness and the northern lights. Green ribbons dancing across skies, so clear the stars seem close enough to touch. Further north, a heart-shaped mountain rises from the sea, marking one of Greenland's most striking settlements. Uummannaq sits on a small island, dwarfed by the mountain that gives it both its name and its identity. This remote community of around 1,200 souls lives in the shadow of a landmark that defines life here in every season. The heart-shaped peak above the colorful houses has drawn explorers and dreamers for centuries. Uummannaq Mountain stands as the undisputed centerpiece of this Arctic outpost. The name itself means heart-shaped in Greenlandic, and the mountain earns this title with its distinctive twin peaks. Rising over 1,170 meters straight from the fjord, but the dark rock face dominates every view in town. Local hunters have used this peak as a navigation point for generations. Its silhouette visible across vast stretches of frozen sea. The mountain watches over a community that still lives by traditional rhythms. In winter, dog sleds cross the sea ice beneath its gaze, while summer brings the midnight sun to bathe its slopes in golden light. This ancient sentinel of stone connects the people below to thousands of years of Inuit heritage. Uummannaq Mountain stands not merely as a geographic feature, but as the spiritual anchor of an entire region where the old ways still hold meaning. Crossing the vast ice sheet to the east coast, we discover a labyrinth of rock that stretches deeper into the land than any other. Here, where the Arctic reveals its most dramatic face, lies Scoresby Sund. This is the largest fjord system on Earth, its sheer scale defying easy description, while its silence speaks volumes. The fjord reaches over 300 kilometers inland from the coast. Towering cliffs rise straight from waters so still they mirror the sky like dark glass. Massive icebergs drift through these channels, some as tall as buildings, carved into shapes by wind and time. The colors here shift between impossible blues and whites that seem to glow from within. Few humans have ever set foot in this remote wilderness. The Inuit once hunted these waters, leaving behind traces of camps and stone circles along the shores. Today, only a handful of visitors reach Scoresby Sund each year, drawn by its raw, and untouched beauty. In this place, the Arctic crown of Denmark shows its most ancient and powerful face, unchanged since the time of ice. On these isolated eastern shores, Tasiilaq stands as a colorful outpost of survival against the untamed wild. It is the largest settlement on this coast, home to around 2,000 souls. Reached only by helicopter or boat. This community exists where few others dare to settle. The town clings to rocky slopes overlooking a fjord system of staggering beauty. Life here follows rhythms unchanged for generations. Hunters still paddle traditional kayaks through waters thick with ice. The Inuit culture runs deep in Tasiilaq, preserved by the very remoteness that defines daily existence. Wooden houses painted in bright reds, blues, and yellows dot the hillsides, their colors defiant against the white and gray wilderness surrounding them. Children play on streets, where sled dogs rest between journeys across the frozen landscape. The mountains rising behind Tasiilaq hold some of Greenland's most dramatic scenery. Glaciers tumble down from the ice cap, calving into fjords with thunderous roars. In summer, the midnight sun bathes everything in golden light for weeks without end. Winter brings the northern lights dancing above in ribbons of green and purple. This is Greenland at its most authentic, where the old ways persist and the land remains truly wild. Down at the southern tip, the Prince Christian Sound cuts through the mountains like a knife through frozen silk. This narrow passage stretches for nearly 60 miles between towering walls of rock and ice. Few places reveal the raw power of the Arctic quite like this corridor of stone and glacier. The sound winds between mountains that rise straight from the water's edge. Glaciers spill down from hidden valleys, their blue faces carving chunks of ice into the dark waters below. Ships that pass through here move slowly, dwarfed by cliffs that climb thousands of feet into mist and cloud. The silence here feels ancient, broken only by the crack of shifting ice and the cry of seabirds circling overhead. For centuries, this passage served as a vital route for hunters and traders moving between settlements along the coast. The Inuit knew these waters long before European explorers charted them on paper. Today, expedition vessels carry travelers through this same corridor, following the path of wooden boats that came before. Standing on deck, as granite walls close in on either side, the scale of Greenland becomes undeniable. This is a land shaped by forces far greater than human hands, where ice and stone have written their own story across millions of years. Finally, we land in the green valleys of South Greenland, where the history of this union began. Qaqortoq rises from the edge of a sheltered fjord, the largest town in this remote region. Here, the ice loosens its grip just enough to allow green valleys and wildflowers to flourish during the brief summer months. This is where Greenland feels almost gentle. Geographically, we are just miles from Canada. But historically, we are firmly in Europe. Over 500 years before Columbus sailed to America, Vikings were farming these valleys. The bond between Scandinavia and Greenland isn't a modern political arrangement. It's a millennium of shared history written in these stones. Walking through the streets reveals an open-air gallery unlike any other on Earth. Local artist Akahu began carving faces and figures directly into the ancient rocks scattered throughout town in 1993. Over 30 stone sculptures now peer out from unexpected corners, transforming Qaqortoq into a living museum where art and landscape merge into one. The central fountain in the main square holds the distinction of being the only public fountain in all of Greenland. A small detail that speaks to the town's unique character within this vast Arctic territory. The journey across this realm leaves something behind, not just memories of places, but a feeling that two worlds can share one heartbeat. From the cobblestones of Copenhagen to the silence of Scoresby, the thread connecting harbor and ice becomes impossible to miss. The colorful houses of Nihan and Qaqortoq speak the same language of warmth against cold skies. The ancient stones of Kronborg Castle echo in the ruins of Hammershus. And where the Ilulissat ice fjord carves its frozen giants into the sea, the same spirit that built Tivoli Gardens somehow feels present, a people who find beauty at every edge of their world. This is the Arctic Crown. It is ancient, it is united, and it is inseparable. Click on the video that's appearing now to continue your journey of the wonders of the world.